va maintenant continuer avec une petite introduction.
With a little introduction to the theme of innovation and fundamental science. And I'd like to introduce Sénamé Koffi Agbodjinou, who is the founder of a laboratory in Lomé in Togo. Very interesting. And
non, c'est bon.
No, that's fine.
Donc, il organise un labo d'innovation à Lomé au Togo.
Organizes an innovation lab in Lagos, Togo, and we've had some very interesting contacts with him, and he also has had interesting contacts with the FAD lab at ICTP as well, and he'll perhaps talk to us about this in this closing session.
Donc,
I especially would like to underline the links which exist between innovation and science. And in fact, I'm going to follow the theme of the very first presentation by Pierre Weil at the beginning of this conference. We are in a status of social imbalance and disequilibria, which is social as well as political in the Middle East, in Africa and elsewhere. And for me, this situation is very largely due to the lack of economic development in several areas of the world. So how can we get economic how can we do something about this? We can't, as technical people, as scientists, do a great deal, but we see, nonetheless, that what is essential for economic development is innovation. That's key, and that technology is essential for innovation, that science, applied science, is essential for technology, and obviously fundamental science is essential as well. So you can't apply science if you don't know the fundaments of science. So for me, there is a virtuous cycle or chain that goes from fundamental science to peace. That's how I interpret science for peace. And we have talked of various stages along this route. And now, briefly, we're going to hear about innovation from Sénamé. So, just to recall that innovation is linked to fundamental science. I think that Max, when he 150 years ago linked electricity to magnetic waves, when Einstein postulated general relativity, and they didn't, in fact, foresee navigation by satellite, but it was the beginnings. So fundamental science is therefore important, essential for innovation. You never know when the first thing is developed what is going to lead to. And obviously the killer app was the World Wide Web. It was invented by Tim Berners-Lee to allow his physicists to share their research and discoveries. And it caused a world revolution. Many things that we have discussed during this conference are possible, have been possible, thanks to Tim Berners-Lee and his innovation. So I'll conclude here, and now let me give the floor to Sénamé Koffi, who's going to talk about his adventures. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to start by thanking the foundation, sharing knowledge. I'd like to thank you for this invitation, and also the ICTP for the little gift which was given to us yesterday. I'll talk about it later. I'm called Sénamé. I'm an architect and anthropologist by profession, and I study ancient architectures to see the lessons that can be drawn for modern architecture. But I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to talk to you especially about our project that I'm engaged in. I am therefore very involved in a movement which we call a collaborative movement or a common self-help group. And for us to be able to talk about movements, you have to have several things that come together. And that's where we're at today, because this movement that I'm talking to you today has its own specific means of financing, crowdfunding, if you like, and we look to working space, fab labs, and so on. It's a movement that has its various figures and stars with its own specific ideology. We do-it-yourself, open source mentality, and so on. So with a series of factors which come together that turn us into a movement, and in fact we have got started in around 2015 when things really changed, and when the sharing, the mutualization, do-it-yourself all started up. And another thing that we have in common is this sort of refusal of this centralized unit, to have things more widespread and more diffused. If you like, it's a criticism of industry. You know, the philosophy of production. Since Adam Smith posed the problem of industry, and industry was being seen as the main problem, but really never thinking about the end of the era of the industrial area. Marxism, in fact, proposes several stages to regulate industry, and the trade unions, in fact, were thought to be the real solution. But in fact, no solution was ever given to the large factory. It was never considered as being something which would come to an end. And this new technology has theories which come to the surface and believe that we can think of a world without industry, or having something which is a small size, small scale, community type of industry. Now, the most interesting theorists of this movement is Pekka Aimanen, who and he talked especially about this new ethic of work, and which was opposed to the traditional capitalist Protestant approach to work and industry. This might seem a bit marginal, this movement, but nonetheless, it in fact was taken on board by industry itself, because in fact it's been called the third industrial revolution by another theorician, and that's another way that this movement in fact is called. The university also has taken it on board. We saw a great example yesterday of the ICTP Fab Lab, and with open source developments which are seen in many countries. Renault has started its Fab Lab, and so on. So it's been englobed by industry. In Africa, this is a very interesting movement for us, for the potential that it has to make a different choice other than industry, because in African countries can't invest in innovation, which in fact would allow big, large-scale industries to develop. So the production capacity of this sort of small-scale industry is very interesting for Africa. What it should develop a work ethic which is very close to the general informality of work which we already have in Africa. So it wouldn't ask that we completely change our mindset, but we direct it in this direction. And the third reason why we have chosen to become part of this movement is an anthropological reason, if you like. When we see this heartfelt ethic, we see that this is something which is very close to our culture. It goes back to the way our villages work. Our villages work thanks to the cohesion and the meeting of people in the villages, which leads to collaborative work. And that is this collaborative side of this movement seemed to be very much in tune with the way that Africa works, the ritual moments that are seen in African way of life, and the Fab Labs could be in a sort of incubators for African development. So what is paradoxical is that this new technology has been put in place, but in fact goes back to traditional Africa as a way of progressing Africa. So this is a rather strange situation which has been developed, and we call it low-high tech. And the idea is to work in close collaboration with traditional African ethics and culture and develop a whole series or package of innovative solutions and ways of producing that will allow for small-scale innovation that can be put in place in Africa. And in the wake of this, we have developed a smart city for Lomé. This smart city is developed as the town of tomorrow based on technology, and again with imported technology. So we talk about an African smart city, but it's not technology developed in Africa. So now we're looking at the technology side, and we would use collaborative models and social innovations like Fab Labs and so on, which are more African. And this would allow us to create a production technology for native technology. And this is developed in Lomé, in the frontier with Ghana, because this is the very specific area, difficult area, because it's an area which is very close to the frontier, but it's got a lot of potential because we have the University of Lomé, there's the architecture school, and we have very large schools with Pan-African ambitions. And we've tried here to develop and multiply community labs, and everybody, in fact, has a work contract within a radius of 1 kilometer and work within that radius. So in things like transport, communication, waste disposal, and so on. So we have developed these laboratories and created a smart city with long-term dispositions in mind to be able to again create the city of tomorrow. The first model of this laboratory was created in August 2012, and this is something that works within about a kilometer. It's zero
c'est à la fois un Fab Lab,
it's a zero-level lab, and we have also 11 startups in this incubator which were set up. It also is going to be soon a food lab. We have created one for collaborative catering, exchange of recipes, and so on. We also want to create an source lab, which would be an incubator for resources. And the first thing we completed, which was a 3D printing system. 3D printing is, if you like, the mascot of all our efforts. It's a machine which, when 3D first appeared, many people said, well, it's Marx's prophecy being realized, because he said that inequalities would be abolished the day when production was available to everybody. And with 3D printers, in fact, we are beginning to have this. We see a system whereby everybody can have access and be able to produce. Our 3D printer, in fact, is a recycled waste electronic system, and waste is used, and the idea is to have use very, very high technology. So we see the treatment of garbage and waste, and can be used in many other fields, including building. Thank you very much for this presentation, which was full of ideas. Very interesting. Are there any questions? Two? I would like to give some information with regard to innovation in Africa. This year, in October, in 2014, in other words, the African Development Bank organized in Rabat the first forum on science, technology, and innovation. Unfortunately, no thought was given to innovation carried out by civil society, and invite players and have a session with players who are not institutions or universities. One always thinks of companies and universities in this field. And innovation, as it's conceived today, is carried out especially by companies. Universities do research and pushing the horizon of knowledge and science. A second forum, but of a different type, the first was organized by Rabat, but in February. The date is unofficial at the moment, from the 21st to 24th of February. This will be developed by the African Science Group with the Inter-Academy Group for Development. And this is a group of African and European academies. The meeting will be held in Dakar. So the Science Academy of Dakar will be the organizer of this event, with several other academies, especially with the France Science Academy and Hassan II Moroccan Science Academy. So I think that that would be a very, very good opportunity, this meeting, for you to present your initiative and contact the Secretary General and write to the Academy of Science of Senegal and apply for this, and I'm sure that you will get an answer. This is February 2016, this meeting will be held.
Oui.
Oui, est-ce qu'avec l'imprimante 3D que vous
The 3D printer that was you use, I mean, do you collaborate with, or did you do it with laboratories or universities? I mean, how did it come about? No. As I said, our lab, in fact, is very close to the Lomé University. In fact, we're in the same enclosure. But we have never had an official program with the university. I don't think they really understand exactly what we do as yet. But there are 30 young people, about average age 19, and they work here. They are university students, however, that come and work at our place. And we print at request objects that people request specifically. Okay, I think that we have to close here. I think that your presentation raises many, many questions. It's an example of how IT and high tech can really become disruptive. But in a traditional sense, it's the combination of the two which gives rise to this.
Okay.
There's a question over there. I'm sorry, there's no mic, so we can't hear. The interpreter apologizes, but there's no mic.
C'est une association, je pense, c'est extrêmement intéressant ce qu'ils font. Ça vaut le coup d'aller les voir. trainlinafrica.org.
Okay, merci. Donc,
We apologize, but we couldn't hear that. I'm going to be very strict now. What you were saying at the beginning of the presentation, that you thank the foundation, but also ICTP, because you had interesting interaction with ICTP. Could you tell us about that?
Dans un moment.
I'll talk about this in a minute. Thank you very much.